Hi guys! So I have been thinking of maybe doing more videos where I talk about certain topics because you guys know my life can be very mundane sometimes. So updating through vlogs is still fine at times, but there are certain moments where I feel like I just don't have much to talk about because not many things change very often. So I came up with this idea a couple weeks ago, but I didn't feel like it was something that people would necessarily be interested to hear about in certain ways. But you know what? I'll just talk about it anyways, just because why not? So I came up with the idea to talk about my experiences in online gaming as a female. Usually after I put up a video where I talk about a topic, I always feel like there are some things that I missed because when it comes to some of my older videos where I discuss stuff, I just kind of wing it and I talk as I think, and there ends up being stuff that I really wished I included. So throughout the day today, I tried my best to think of everything that I would want to talk about in this video, and I wrote up a little sheet at work and emailed it to myself. And honestly, part of this turned out to be like me literally writing it as if it were going to be a blog post, and I was like, this is not how I want it to be like, because if I write it out like full sentences and everything, then I'm going to feel compelled to read off of this and then restate it to the camera, and then I feel like if I did that, it just wouldn't come out as natural maybe. So I'm gonna try my best to try to like just tell a story, and hopefully it comes out okay. So let me put that aside for now, and I will reference it in between topics maybe, or before I move on to another topic, just to make sure I did not forget anything. And I don't mean topic, I just mean like instances of my experiences. I'm just gonna kind of jump around. See, the thing is, I feel like when I bring forth a topic like this, a lot of the instances that I think about that relates to my gender tend to be negative, because a lot of female experiences or stereotypes for gaming tend to be negative. So aside from that though, I think other aspects that people might find interesting is online relationships that tend to form from online gaming. So I'd say a fair amount of my experience tends to be in relation to online relationships, and then there have been a few where things tend to be really negative, or maybe just kind of surprising experiences, or I don't know. You'll see when I talk about it. So I guess like the very first time I participated in online gaming was during high school. I was playing Halo 2 on Xbox Live, and that was a game I really enjoyed. I played it a fair amount, as much as I could at the time, because that was during a time period where my parents hated gaming. They thought it was, unproductive, all of that negative stuff that people used to associate it with. So they would limit it as much as possible for me. And also at the time, since they felt that way, me and my brother had to share an Xbox Live account. And it was pretty difficult at the time. I feel like a lot of my animosity towards my parents focused on gaming from childhood leading up to college, all the way up till college. Trust me, it was not a good relationship. As a teenager, I was actually really wanting to cut off my parents once I became an adult, because I felt at the time that I disliked them that much. But anyways, back into Halo 2. So I guess the only thing that I can think about as a female for Xbox Live is that maybe the few times I tried to speak up during one of the matches, people would kind of react surprised or react negatively to me speaking up, because they're like, whoa, there's a girl, like what the hell's going on? And I think at that age, I didn't think much about it, or at least I don't remember feeling negative about it. Of course, there is maybe a little bit of negativity to them reacting that way, because it definitely discourages me from wanting to speak again. And having that feeling of not wanting to communicate, even to strangers, kind of sucks, I think, at that age, because you want that confidence, being able to communicate through voice, I think. Maybe an experience like that definitely carries on down the years that you don't realize, because just now I just thought about the fact that in Dota, I am not interested in talking through voice in the client at all. And something that I've noticed these past few years is sometimes people like just use voice very often through client. And I feel like I view it in a very abnormal way, because when people do that, I'm always surprised, where I'm like, wow, they're just willing to talk to a bunch of random strangers and not worried about like receiving backlash. I think that's kind of the mentality I have towards that. I personally have never talked in client in Dota. The only time I did was by accident, where I think I pressed my keybind by accident and I may have said like something brief. And actually at the end of that match, I think there was a child on our team or something, like a young kid who was trying to trash talk me based on my gender. So that stuff definitely still happens. And now that I think about it, yeah, that stuff really does carry over. Even now, even in WoW, I think when I join Discord for groups of 5, for Mythic Plus or anything, I don't like talking in the very beginning, because I just know that people will be surprised initially when they realize you're female, and it sucks to feel like when you reveal your gender, people will be surprised. I guess that surprise could be a positive or negative one, but I just feel like it should be neutral, you know? I don't really want any sort of abnormal feeling for someone to hear you talk at the very beginning, that is. Okay, so for a lot of my experiences, I think I will talk about WoW, mainly because it's actually a game that I have spent a lot of time on, and predominantly that is where most of my experiences stemmed from. So in the very beginning of the time of me playing WoW, I'd say for the first few years, I definitely had a lot of experience with online relationships. And I think a lot of the reason for that is because I was very young. Burning Crusade came out in 2006, I think. So that was 12 years ago. And 12 years ago, I was 14. So at the time, as a teenager, for some reason, I did not care that much about boys. Like in high school, I remember my mentality was like, I did have some crushes on guys, but it wasn't something that like took over my mind where I was like, man, I really want to date someone. Man, I really want a boyfriend. Man, I really want to have sex. Like, I did not care about sex at all. Didn't have sex until college. I don't know why I mentioned that, but I think that mindset is maybe interesting to talk about first before I go into online stuff. But yeah, did not have a boyfriend at all in my life up until that point. And I don't know, just didn't have interest in guys in real life. So when we go online and in game, at the time, I wasn't able to do PvE because my parents were, trying to prevent me from playing. And for raiding, you need to be able to make your raid times 100%. And with my parents being like, no, you can't stay up until 12 a.m. playing WoW, are you crazy? I just knew I couldn't PvE. So I decided that I would try PvP out. And at the end of season 2, I started trying to find a partner. And I ended up finding a mage from Trade Chat. His in-game name was Zan, Z-A-N. And I just remember being really surprised when he whispered me, because he was in one of the top Alliance PvE guilds at the time. And I was just so surprised that somebody from a good guild would want to play with a random person like me. I think at the time I kind of viewed most of them to have the mentality like, oh, I'm in the best PvE guild. I don't need to play with these random possible bad players. So we did some twos together. At the time, I also watched a lot of arena videos, and a lot of them were the priest rogue composition for twos. So at the time, I was like obsessing over finding a really good rogue partner. So I would often leave our twos team and play with a random rogue I found in trade chat, and then play with him again, because I feel like he was on pretty often and he was always willing to play with me. So being able to do twos again with him after leaving our team wasn't very difficult. And I feel like that happened for a little while before he managed to convince me that we had like pretty good twos chemistry together, and that the priest mage comp was actually good. I am pretty confident that we started playing this composition before it became actually very popular later on. But basically, I would imagine since we played with each other so much, we started liking each other. And I was really young at the time, so I still think I am similar in the sense that I can be really passive about my feelings. So I was, a teenager at the time, so he actually had a girlfriend in real life, but I think it took quite a while for us to tell each other that we liked each other, because there was a brief period of time where he transferred off, and I think it was to play with his girlfriend or something like that. And when he left, I was sad, but at the time I was like, man, he has a girlfriend. I can't be, pining over this guy. So I don't remember how long he was gone for. I don't think it was even that long, but he transferred back. And then when he whispered me about it, I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, why are you back? And I'm pretty sure the main reason he came back was to play with me. And I also think that was the moment he told me he liked me, and I was like, oh yay, I like you too. To be honest, I think this guy was the first guy I really liked in that way. I mean, I've had crushes in high school, but I really liked him because, we had that connection where we talked a lot through Ventrilo. We were playing arenas a lot, so in a sense, we were just spending a lot of time together. And it was just a weird period for me, because I knew I felt like I was being like that other woman who was just like, messing around with a guy that was taken, and it really sucked. I think in the very beginning, I guess just to make things clear about how we interacted, I think in the very beginning there really wasn't all that much that was abnormal. Me, even now, I think I've been the same online even as a teenager, where I personally do not think that I'm flirty at all. I don't think I am. Maybe I am, but from what I can tell, I feel like at times, maybe my sense of humor might be misconstrued as flirting. I really hope not. It's just that I've always just had a very non-filtered subject matter of talking. Does that make any sense? Basically what I mean is I don't really care about what I talk about. I like just talking about whatever the hell I want. So I might make sexual jokes or references, or talk about hentai, or like talk about tentacle fucking. Like, I'll talk about anything I want. And I feel like maybe at times a guy might think that you are expressing interest in them if you make a sexual joke. I'm not sure. I feel like some people might though. So that's the thing. Like, I feel like my behavior online has always just been like being myself. I don't say specific things to try to catch someone's attention that's in the same channel. I don't act any differently, I think. So that's kind of the thing. Like, so during BC and Wrath of the Lich King, it kind of feels weird for me to say this, but I just feel like there were several guys that I was either talking to at the time or played with that it just didn't feel like it was entirely friends. But the thing is, for a lot of these, we didn't like openly tell each other that we kind of liked each other more than friends. It was just more like, I feel like the timeline for this kind of thing is usually like, you meet someone, you start grouping up with them more often, or you start doing more stuff with them in game, and then you end up talking to them more frequently, and that's usually what it sticks to. But it just feels different, right? Because you either wait for each other to do stuff, or you farm old mounts together, or you just do achievements together. Like, it just feels a little bit more exclusive than if they were just a friend on your buddy list. So that's kind of what I mean, where randomly through different phases of me playing BC and Wrath, I would just come across these random guys who I ended up clicking with more personality wise. And a lot of them never were exclusive relationships. Like, we never told each other, like, are we dating now? And like, are we girlfriend, boyfriend? But yeah, it just had that feel of like dating, I guess. But anyways, I guess back to Zan, because that one was like one that took place over years. That really surprised me, actually. And to be honest, when I think of PvP, a lot of my nostalgia goes back to Zan, because he was my first arena partner. He was the first person I got Gladiator with. And when I think back to how we both started from like the bottom and gradually improved to achieve Gladiator, it's just a really nice thing to think about, right? Because I've looked through my screenshots before in the past where I would just like scroll through and see like the screenshot I took when I finally achieved 22,000 rating to get shoulders. And it's just a picture of me sitting in Arathi Basin, but I was so proud of getting that achievement and being able to purchase shoulders. But if you just think about it later on, like in season 7 or 8, I managed to get like 2,700 and threes running Holy Pally, Disc Priest, and Warrior. But just thinking about how like you just gradually inch your way up. Because I think in season 3, me and Zan got Duelist in 2s, and then we managed to achieve Gladiator in season 4. So it just feels really cool to me how you grow together as partners, because later on I just realized, finding an arena partner you really click with and that you really enjoy playing with and that you also trusted their skill is very difficult. I think I got very lucky with Zan as my first partner, because as I got better, I never felt like he was a handicap. Because, sometimes when you get better at a game, you start to realize that who you were playing with all along maybe isn't as good as you thought. But I think with him, I never felt that way. So I kind of miss having a partner like that to do arenas with, or even to PvP with. And it just kind of sucks, because a lot of the other like social stuff definitely got in the way of us playing together long term. But basically, he had a girlfriend, and he seemed to be that type of person that was like, I really like you, but he was afraid of being alone, I guess. He did say that to me, I remember, through a whisper, that like he considered breaking up with her, but like I'm just some random person on the internet out of state. So it was definitely a weird period of time for me, because I was still in high school and I was immature in terms of like my thought process and just what I knew to be right or wrong. So at the time, I think there were definitely moments where I was kind of like riding the happiness train of just enjoying interacting with him. And sometimes we would call each other pet names, and I kind of went along with it for a little bit. But I was never the type of person that would like send nudes. I never sent anybody any of that crap. I can't believe people would do that to somebody online and include their face. I don't know why people would do that. So I never did that. I never did anything inappropriate with him. I think at most the inappropriate thing that I did with him was probably not be as assertive about telling him what we could or couldn't do, if that makes any sense. Although I don't know. I don't really want to think too deeply about what the right course of action was for me at the time back then, because I definitely think him as the older party probably should have been more responsible with how he behaved or like what he decided to do. Whenever I whenever I ended up, playing with other people that happened to be guys, because that's like 90% of the population, he would get jealous. And after a certain point, I did tell him, I was like, we should probably cut back on playing together or talking to each other because of your girlfriend. And I'm pretty sure she knew about me after some point, and it was just not a good situation to be in. But he did also get her pregnant. I remember he told me that in a whisper, and I was in Warsaw Gulch, and I forget what our state was at the time, like whether we were distancing or not. To be honest, whenever there was distance, I was the one that initiated it, because I just felt really uncomfortable with the fact that he had a girlfriend in real life, and you can't pretend that she doesn't exist, right? Just because we're talking to each other online. So yeah, he told me he got her pregnant, and I'm pretty sure after that point on, we just completely stopped talking and playing together. Honestly, I do feel like I got along with him really well. Whenever I think about him, I just think about, yeah, I think we got along really well. And to be honest, I do sort of wish that I could play with him again, just because he was a good player and he knew his stuff. And he was my first partner. We got Gladiator together. I think we may have gotten Gladiator a second season in RMP. I kind of forget what comps I got Glad in, because it was so long ago. I guess another thing in relation to him, though, slightly, is that in Wrath, I was finally able to raid. I forget what situation I was in. Maybe I had just gotten to college, and I definitely wanted to raid at that point because I wasn't living at home anymore. So at the time, I feel like Burning Legion was starting to die out, not entirely yet, but there were still some like pretty good alliance guilds on the server, and one of them was actually Shane's guild, Reanimated. So Zan was raiding with them at the time, and actually Zan has been raiding since vanilla, and he was usually in one of the better guilds or the best guild. Like, he was considered a top tier raider for a while because he was just always in some of the best guilds. So he was raiding with Reanimated at the time, and I wanted to raid as well. But I guess the problem with that is a lot of people thought that I was using my connection with Zan to get that raid spot. I feel like a lot of people at that time did not believe that I was a skilled player. To be honest, I do not remember PvE all that well during that time, because I feel like when I talked to Shane recently, he was saying how like people thought I got carried to Gladiator, or that maybe somebody else was playing my accounts, stuff like that. A lot of people back then didn't really believe that a female could be good or skilled in a game. So in terms of PvE, I feel like a lot of them didn't like me. There was also an officer in the guild who was very red pill. This was actually the first experience I had with somebody of that nature, but my mentality at the time was probably not the greatest, because there was this one priest in the guild who was a name that has been around for a while and was a female. And the thing is, though, she was not a good player. She was really bad. And the thing is, they would take her to raids. At the time, they had more holy priests than they needed, so they would cycle me in with this girl and 2 other priests or something like that. So when she would be in there and I would be benched, it would really piss me off because she's not a skilled player, so I did not believe she deserved that spot. So the times where I saw this officer calling her like a cunt or a bitch in forums, I did not feel that badly about it because I didn't like her as a player. But now that I think back to it, his behavior was definitely like really disgusting, and I personally now would never raid in a guild where somebody has beliefs like that or thoughts like that or even openly says stuff like that. So, yeah, that's the thing. Like, from what I can remember when I applied to the guild, I think he called me a bitch in my application thread. I can't find it anymore. I actually still have access to the reanimated forums. Shane gave me access, and I wanted to look back at my application thread, but when I look at it, I don't find anything crazy like him saying that I'm a bitch, but I am quite positive that that happened. It's just interesting to recall all of these things because I'm using, you know, everything that I've learned now to try to analyze like what happened back then. And it's just weird to imagine that because I was young and hadn't learned much yet in terms of the world and life and what is right or wrong, I didn't think his behavior was that atrocious as I do now. Honestly, at the time, I'm pretty sure I just accepted and expected that behavior of people where they just wouldn't really give females a chance, or even if you did achieve something great, like through skill, they still wouldn't really acknowledge it. They would try to, you know, say you got carried or something like that. But yeah, after that period of time for BC and Wrath, maybe like a year or two afterwards, I did, for some reason, feel like I was a slut. I think I applied that word to myself very easily, and it was kind of weird that I thought that way. But I just think that I believed that since I had like so many different guys that felt more than friends at that time, that maybe I was like being promiscuous or something, but I was just never openly flirty. I did feel a little bit ashamed afterwards, but now that I think about it, I don't really think that there should be anything to be ashamed about. It's not like I negatively affected anybody. It was just people enjoying each other's company, and I do realize now that it can be very hard to find someone you really click with. So if you happen to, like, why not just enjoy each other's company? I never did anything that I would personally regret now, in the sense of like something I would be actually ashamed of, like if I had nudes spread around. I never sent that stuff out. And like the girls that would send them out with her face in it, there was actually a scandal sort of on our server where one of the female priests on Alliance side, there were pictures that leaked of her and videos of her like using a vibrator on herself, and I wasn't really surprised that that girl had something like that happen. But that is kind of the thing. I feel like something that people might not know right off the bat is that I am not very fond of other female gamers, and it kind of sucks to say that because I do think I am like really strongly critical of them. But the issue with that is I have rarely, if ever, came across a female player that I can respect based on skill and based on her ability to not be attention seeking. So throughout my 15 plus years of playing games online, I feel like I've only came across less than 5 people who I can say I respect. And some of them are good from skill, but in terms of like personality wise, I'm not necessarily sure I would really like them, because I feel like maybe the past 5 years or maybe past 7 years, a lot of girls have been using the tag like gamer girl to, I don't really know how to explain it. Like, it feels attention seeking to me to put gamer girl. Like, why can't you leave your gender out of it? I really don't like when people bring attention to their gender. That was something that I never did online. I never cared about making myself known as a female. I always tried to avoid it. Or if it was inevitable through voice chat or something, then it's whatever. But I just really disliked it when females would make it apparent, and it's very unnecessary to do so, in my opinion. So some might be good, but have a trait like that. But I guess because of all my non-existent experiences with good female gamers, even nowadays, I'm not thrilled to play with one. But the thing is, I feel like in this specific case, it might make more sense for me to be pessimistic going into it. And then if they surprise me, then it's a pleasant surprise and I welcome it. But up until now, it hasn't really happened. So my perspective won't necessarily change. I would like for it to, but to be honest, I am not confident that will ever happen because Twitch exists. And when Twitch exists, you have attention-seeking females all over that platform who probably, half of them, only got into gaming because they knew they could use their tits to make money online. Not really something I like being a part of. Honestly, growing up, there have been many times where I kind of wished I was a male because I feel like my sense of humor meshes better with men at times, because I know how sometimes men could have like very not good sense of humor in terms of like at the expense of women kind of humor. But I have always just gotten along better with men, and my hobbies kind of align better with men, and I am honestly just not wanting to be associated with all of these females in gaming. I don't really agree with how they behave and what they do, so sometimes I just wish I wasn't lumped in with them because of my gender. The next experience of mine is actually one that is one of the worst I've ever experienced, and it happened last year in February. So, in Legion, I raided with my friend's guild at the very beginning. I left them because they were not competitive enough for me. We were carrying a lot of bad players and I couldn't take it anymore, so I left. And I joined a guild on Terralion called Astral. I was in Astral for, I don't really remember how long, but man, I don't remember the raids or like what order they came out in, so I don't remember when I left Astral. Oh, actually, I left them during Nighthold. So I left them, and then I joined a guild on Lightbringer called MLFA. And I was only in that guild for a couple of days before I left because what happened was so ridiculous and so shameful, disappointing, everything. So when I joined the guild, I got a bunch of whispers from guild members greeting me, welcoming me to the guild, or maybe just like trying to have like a random ass conversation with me based on maybe like my YouTube channel. I think one of them commented on Sammy's video jumping on my desk. But basically, the vibe I got from this bombardment of whispers was that it wasn't friendly. It was probably focused on the fact that I'm female. Because if a random dude joins a guild, you're not gonna get like 5 whispers from the guild members. I highly doubt that would happen. So when I got those whispers, I just got like really bad vibes from all of them. Bad in the sense that it wasn't with friendly intent. I remember telling one of the officers that one specific person maybe was like kind of bothersome, and I told him that I would be putting him on ignore because I didn't want to receive these whispers anymore. And actually, prior to getting these whispers, I was told that there was already a female in the guild. She was 22 years old, and I don't remember where I heard this from because it's so fucking dumb, but I was told that the guild already had a female and that she had really thick skin. This was something that they really kind of drilled into me, I think, during the application process, where they're like, you really need to have thick skin in this guild. So somebody told me about her and how one of the guild members asked her when she joined how much cum she can guzzle. And maybe it was like a point of pride or something that she answered it and took it as a joke, and they were so happy that she wasn't offended or anything. So I knew about this before I got the whispers. So she whispered me as well, and I'm assuming I knew all of that beforehand because I recall not wanting to talk to her and not caring about her because I most likely had no respect for her, and yeah, just having no respect for her, so I didn't really want to talk to her or care to hear what she had to say. But basically, after I told that officer that I was blocking this one person, he most likely scolded that guild member. And then the thing is, during that time, I transferred in the middle of the week. So I was already locked to the raid, so they told me to watch one of the raiders' streams to learn the fight or see how they communicate and just get a feel for the general atmosphere. So I did. And when I tuned in, the guildies were in the Twitch chat trashing me, and they said that I was a cunt. They said that I should be raped, and just like a lot of red pill vibes, like very strong red pill. So I remember after seeing that, I was starting to feel like I didn't want to log on anymore because I was like concerned about getting whispers from people. I didn't want to be harassed. I also didn't feel very excited about the aspect of raiding with these types of people who would say something like that. So I think after like one day of a lot of deep thought, I decided that there's no way I would be staying in a guild like this. So I left and applied to emphasis on Sargeras. But basically, after that happened, the recruitment officer was actually like kind of an asshole. He was very passive aggressive when I left because I believe he said something along the lines of like, we told you to have thick skin, like you're leaving because of this, kind of that sort of attitude about me leaving. And I just remember being like so disappointed he said something like that because it's disgusting what those guys said. It's just like so disgusting that people have the mentality that some of those guys did in the Twitch chat, and to see people keep people like that around just because of their skill, even though they are blatantly disrespecting other members of the guild, that's just a very toxic environment, very unhealthy. You don't want to be around people like that at all. So I was just like, I didn't really remember saying anything back to him because I just lost respect for that person after that. But one of the officers did end up reaching out to me a couple days after that happened because he wanted to apologize to me about what happened because he thought the whole situation was ridiculous, and he definitely did not think I was in the wrong for leaving for that. I mean, who the fuck would think I'm wrong for leaving for that? He kind of told me a little bit about the aftermath where they actually kicked the one member who said like the worst stuff, which honestly, I feel like they should have kicked more than him because there were a lot of people in that Twitch chat who were kind of like circle jerking that guy's messages or whatever he was saying, the ideas behind what he was saying. So if they are agreeing with him, they're just as bad as him. But anyways, like he was just saying how the guild was like so disappointed it happened, and that the officers were so like disappointed because they felt I was a really strong candidate and they wanted better range DPS. So losing a strong applicant over something like that, they were just really pissed off. But God, I still can't believe that was last year. It was my first experience with extreme red pill directly at me. That was exhausting to talk about. All right, we are finally coming to a close, and to be honest, this is like my second session of sitting down here and talking to you guys because earlier when I was recording, I think it was approaching like close to an hour and a half and I did not record all of the footage. There was a moment where I was talking and my camera wasn't recording, and that was so depressing because you talk for like 20 minutes and you didn't record anything. Next instance. A couple weeks before Battle for Azeroth launched, I was like maybe just casually doing a mythic dungeon. I was like browsing, looking for a group, and I joined someone's group, and the exchange was so funny initially that I knew the guy was not someone to be liked. But the thing is, all right, so I joined the group, and right in the beginning, the guy whispers me like, "Are you a girl?" And I haven't had someone whisper me like that in a very long time, so I asked him like, "Why?" He was like, "Oh, your name." So I was just like, "Yes." And he responded with, "Where are you from with a beautiful name like that?" And I was like, I sent that whisper to friends, and I was just like laughing at how ridiculous somebody could be like that. But the thing is, when I looked up his Radar IO, he had really good Mythic Plus credentials. Like, he was very, very high rated. I believe when he was active in pushing keys, he was like top 5 world rogue or something. He was very up there. So inevitably, he sent me a friend request, and the main reason I decided to accept it, despite knowing that he had so much focus on my gender, was that I was hoping he would just be somebody that I could just do Mythic Dungeons with, that I knew was a good player. And for a while it seemed tolerable, but this guy was really something. So he would often ask me to get on Discord. The first day he added me, he was like, "You want to keep me company on Discord?" And I was like, I'm gonna listen to some music, so not tonight. I was like, God damn, this guy is really forward. And then he started the other ridiculous thing was, he was like, "I just started my Instagram account and I need some more followers. Can you follow me?" And he gave me his tag. So I went to look at it out of curiosity, and I don't really understand this male thing where they blatantly lie to you, because his account has been active for over a year. He's had posts up since 2017. So I just don't see the connection of saying something so obviously false and then trying to get me to follow him. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I just like said something like, "No, I don't want to follow you." And he was just that type of guy who would just randomly say like baby or cutie. Like, he would just throw those in there when talking to me, and that was really annoying. And he would also, just a few times, he just kept asking for me to get on Discord. He asked me to follow him on Instagram a second time. And there were just like so many various things about this person that became like so hard to be around him, because for his Discord server, he had a picture of this girl's tits. Like, her tits were huge and they were like pressed together. And all you see was this to just below the boobs. You don't see nipples or anything, but it was literally tits in your face, it felt like. I think when he linked it to me initially, I joined the server, but I didn't join to talk to him. But eventually I left because I wasn't gonna freaking deal with opening Discord and seeing tits in my face every time. So when I left, the next day he's like, "Oh, you left my Discord server." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna stare at tits all the time." And he was like laughing, saying that was funny. So he changed the picture for me and then asked me to join again. But all of these instances are just so stupid. Like, you can tell what kind of person this is. Like, not somebody I can respect at all. And another thing was, like, we were doing Court of Stars. I was running this with some of the guildies from my last guild, and this guy, and he typed in party chat, something pathetic. He typed in party chat, "Can we finish this run already? I need to go have sex." He said that. He said that, and he wasn't ashamed of saying it. Like, what the hell kind of person? Like, I understand, you know, being proud of who you are and saying whatever the fuck you want without care of other people, but to me, he just looked like such an idiot typing something like that. So after that instance and all of the other shit he does, I was like, this guy is fucking stupid. So I removed him off my friends list, and then he, you know, sent me Discord messages, whispered me on online, like, "Why'd you remove me? I went to the beach for the weekend and you removed me. Like, I don't know if he was saying something stupid like, oh, I've been gone MIA for a couple days and you removed me because of that. Hopefully that's not what he was trying to say, because that is extra stupid. But there were a couple days where he would whisper me right when I logged on, like, oh, I've been waiting for you to log on. I was like, oh God. See, this is one of those situations where I was really disappointed, right? I didn't play with him long enough to judge entirely, but from what I could tell, he did seem like a really good player. And it sucked to me to feel like I came across a good player that I couldn't continue playing with because he was a thirsty male. And I wasn't going to tolerate that dumb shit that he was saying anymore, like asking me to follow him on Instagram, because that one seemed really obvious. He wanted me to do that so he could see what I looked like. That's what I'm assuming, and I'm quite sure I'm right, but I haven't had an well, I lied. So in my previous videos, I did talk about that guy who added me off Steam because of my gender. That was the first time I had met somebody in person who added me based on my gender. And that does sound like a bad scenario for meeting somebody. And I think at the time I was just thinking like, I don't go out much. I should try to experience more in my life. So, I mean, in person, he really wasn't that bad to get along with. I thought he was pretty funny, but it made me uncomfortable to think potentially that he was like trying to judge my potential to be a romantic interest for him, because I was pretty certain when I met him in person that I was not going to be interested in that way. But on the flip side, I didn't want to assume, but I think it was maybe a little bit obvious in some ways that he was. Something that he did that I thought was actually pretty decent is that when I told him I didn't want to talk to him anymore, he actually respected that and didn't talk to me for a couple weeks to a month before he messaged me again. But then when I reiterated it, we haven't spoken since. And I appreciate someone respecting my wishes, because what I mentioned recently about that guild drama and Dan harassing me, he is somebody that does not respect your wishes, and he is very excessive in how he does all of that behavior. I was thinking about possibly delving into that a little deeper, but if I think about that scenario, I'm not really sure if that scenario applies to this video topic, because I feel like that scenario is just like, I was unfortunate and I came across someone that is not mentally right in the head, rather than it being specific to my gender. I might be wrong, but I don't think that applies to this video topic, so I will leave that out. But I will say, like I mentioned in the other video, I do not mind providing more detail if people are randomly curious, and if you are, feel free to ask me questions in the comment section and I'll answer if you're curious about this guy. Hopefully you're not, because I would recommend you not waste any of your time thinking about this guy. He does not deserve your time, nor mine. So we're done talking about him, okay? I think that might be the end of my video. Usually when I make videos like this, it feels like I'm just like jumping from instance to instance without smooth transitions. I actually had this issue when I was like writing for school, where we had to do essays. I would feel like so focused on making sure the end of my paragraph had a smooth transition sentence to the next paragraph, but sometimes that is just so hard without it sounding kind of weird, right? You're like, oh, next I'm gonna be talking about this, or you want it to sound not obvious that it's a transition, but it is a transition. So it's really hard to kind of subtly throw it in without it sounding like too obvious. I don't know why I'm bringing education and assignments into this, but I hope I presented everything in a way that was fluid, at least. Like, hopefully I explained things well, and hopefully all of the scenarios were easy to imagine, or like who was who, because I'm sure I referenced a fair amount of people in this video. But yeah, actually in BC and Wrath of the Lich King, more towards BC, I think, there was a period of time where I was playing with a group of friends who included Zan and actually somebody from my high school. So the weird thing about that is I don't remember how we talked to each other that we played WoW. I think maybe we mentioned it to each other in class briefly, like out of the blue, and then we decided to add each other online, and then ultimately he did create a character on my server, and then we ended up playing together that way. But for some reason I kind of just felt like delving into this a little bit more, even though it has nothing to do with the overall topic of the video. But it's just something I've thought about throughout the years, and it's just that this particular guy from my high school, I got along with him really well as friends online. We played together all the time. Him, me, Zan, and like one or two other people. We just always like grouped up together. We had a lot of fun together. We even did some PvP together, ran dungeons. We loved Magister's Terrace, and I always felt weird looking back on that because me and this high school guy, we just, were really good buddies online. And he was in my Spanish class, but in real life, we never really talked that much. After we started playing online, we did probably talk a little bit more in person, but it wasn't enough to like demonstrate how well we got along online. And I think over the years, I've always just kind of like regretted not talking to him more in person, because I really like him as a person, and I would use present tense because he was just really awesome, and I can't imagine that he's any different than before, except better, because people grow. Hopefully he grew in a positive way. But yeah, that period was just so weird because we would see each other throughout the week. I don't remember how often that Spanish class was, but he was always there. We sat like so close to each other, and we just never talked to each other in person in the same way as online. And I feel sad that it was like that. It was like such a divide. I found that to be so strange.